When we think about American history, our minds usually jump straight to 1776. But the land we call America, it was already ancient, home to this incredibly complex world of societies and nations. So in this explainer, we're going to peel back those layers of time to uncover that world.
So, what was this continent really like before the colonists showed up and the United States was born? A lot of us grew up with a pretty specific picture in our heads, right? But it's often, well, incomplete. It's time to fill in the blanks.
And asking this one simple question, it just blows the doors open on a totally different story of America. It's a story of immense diversity, incredible innovation, and a deep-rooted history that was thriving for thousands of years before the first European ships ever touched the horizon.
So the myth you often hear? It paints this picture of a vast, empty wilderness, with just a few small nomadic tribes wandering around. But the reality? Oh, it was a whole different ballgame. We're talking about a continent that was absolutely bustling with hundreds of distinct nations, each with its own language, its own culture, its own traditions. It was anything but uniform.
To really get a handle on this incredible diversity, how about we take a quick tour across North America? We can explore some of the major cultural regions that were flourishing long before 1776. Let's start in the east and make our way across. Okay, first stop, the Eastern Woodlands. Just picture this, a huge territory stretching from the Atlantic coast all the way to the Mississippi River. This wasn't just empty forest, it was a lush, resource-rich world that shaped some of the most influential societies on the entire continent.
And right here, you see this incredible level of sophistication. Nations like the Iroquois Confederacy, the Cherokee, and the Powhatan, they weren't just simple hunters and gatherers, not by a long shot. They were master farmers, using the brilliant three-sister system of growing corn, beans, and squash together. And get this, many of their societies were matrilineal, meaning family lines were traced through the mother, and women held significant power and influence.
All right, from the woodlands, let's head west into the sweeping grasslands of the Great Plains. Now, this is a region a lot of people think they know from the movies, but its iconic culture? Well, it was actually shaped by something that showed up pretty recently in the grand scheme of things. The absolute game changer here? The horse. It was introduced by the Spanish, and it totally transformed life for plains nations like the Lakota and the Comanche. It turned them into these incredibly efficient bison hunters, and frankly, formidable warriors, creating that dynamic, mobile culture we so often associate with the American West.
From the grasslands, let's travel down to the dry, arid climate of the Southwest. Here, in a much tougher environment, societies adapted with some unbelievable ingenuity, coming up with unique ways to build their homes and grow their food to survive and thrive.
And wow, this is where you see some serious innovation. The ancestral Puebloans and their descendants, like the Hopi, built these stunning multi-story cities right into the cliffsides made of adobe. They developed these incredibly sophisticated irrigation and dry farming techniques just to grow corn, beans, and squash in the desert. That's a true testament to their deep, deep understanding of their environment. So this quick tour already shows this amazing diversity, right? But now, let's really zoom in on two examples that just completely shatter that old myth of primitive societies. We're talking massive cities and complex political constitutions.
Okay, just look at this number, 20,000 people. That was the estimated peak population of the city of Cahokia around the year 1200. To put that into perspective for you, Cahokia was actually bigger than London was at the exact same time. Think about that, a true American metropolis.
You'd find it right near modern-day St. Louis, and it was the absolute heart of the Mississippian culture. Its skyline was dominated by over 100 huge earthen mounds. The biggest one, Monk's Mound, stood taller than a 10-story building. Just imagine that. It was this bustling hub for trade, religion, and government, with its influence spreading for hundreds of miles.
But it wasn't just about massive cities. What was happening politically in the Eastern Woodlands was just as mind-blowing, especially with the Haudenosaunee, who you might know as the Iroquois Confederacy and their constitution, the Great Law of Peace.
Look, this wasn't just some loose military pact. No way. It was a super sophisticated, representative democracy. The Great Law of Peace brought 6 different nations together under a Grand Council. Representatives, called sachems, would make decisions only when everyone agreed, by consensus. And get this system, with its ideas of representation and debate, was so advanced that it actually influenced American founding fathers like Benjamin Franklin as they were trying to figure out their own new government. So you have this incredibly vibrant and complex world. And then, everything changed. The arrival of Europeans fundamentally and permanently altered everything. This kicked off a period of contact, conflict, and profound change for every single native nation on the continent.
And if there's one key idea you need to grasp from this era, it's displacement. As European colonies grew, native peoples were systematically and forcibly pushed off their ancestral lands. This set off a massive chain reaction of migration and conflict that just rippled across the entire continent.
Now, this timeline gives you a little snapshot of what was going on. And you can see it was not a simple story of one side just conquering the other. It was this complex dance of constant conflict, like with the Powhatan, amazing, successful resistance, like the Pueblo Revolt, smart diplomacy, like the Great Peace of Montreal, and powerful, unified opposition, like Pontiac's Rebellion. Native nations were active players fighting to shape their own destinies.
But no matter how you slice it, the overall impact of European contact was defined by three huge, powerful forces. First, you've got disease. European illnesses like smallpox, which native people had zero immunity to, just wiped out entire communities. Second, trade. New goods like guns and metal tools created totally new power dynamics and dependencies. And finally, conflict. The relentless push for land and resources just fueled more and more warfare.
Now, it's really easy to look at all this and frame the story as just one of tragedy and loss. But if we do that, we miss a huge part of the story, the unbelievable resilience, the adaptation, and the enduring legacy of these nations.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's really simple, but it's so important. The American story does not start in 1776. It doesn't start with Columbus. It is built on a foundation laid over thousands of years by hundreds of diverse, sophisticated, and enduring nations, whose history is absolutely fundamental to understanding the country today.
And that brings us to our final thought, a question I want to leave with you. Knowing all this, knowing about the cities, the constitutions, the sheer diversity that existed in America long before 1776, how does that change the way you think about the story of America's origins?